Good day, everyone. So, negotiation is at the heart of every successful deal, partnership, as well as any relationship, whether in business or daily life. Today, we are diving into advanced negotiation tools essential for anyone looking to sharpen their skills and achieve better outcomes in complex scenarios. So, what is the importance of advanced negotiation? Negotiation isn't just about winning or losing, it's about finding solutions that work for all the parties involved. As the global marketplace becomes more interconnected and competitive, the ability to negotiate effectively has never been more critical. So, whether you're navigating corporate mergers, international trade deals, or even workplace disputes, mastering advanced negotiation tools can give you the edge. And that is what the purpose of our today's lecture is. So, in this lecture, our goal is to equip you with a deeper understanding of the strategies and techniques that can transfer your approach to negotiation. We will move beyond the basics, exploring the intricacies of principled negotiation, the art of developing creative alternatives, the strategic use of power and persuasion in negotiation, and the importance of how collaboration actually helps us in building value as far as the negotiation deals are concerned. So, basically, the context and relevance in the today's dynamic environment and the challenges that everybody faces in negotiations, be it business organizations, be it of any scale, small scale organization or a medium scale organization or a large scale organization. Negotiations have become more complex, and and because of so much of competition around, it has become more complex than the previous times. So, from cultural differences, and as we are living in a world nowadays that has become borderless, and it's easy to reach out to everybody through social media platforms, through online platforms. So, this is one of the uh, complex environment that we've been living, and especially uh, along with the borderless world, we are also living in a digitalized world. So it's not only from the cultural differences in the global transactions that balances power dynamics in high stake deals. The ability to apply advanced negotiation tools can make the difference between a good agreement and a great one. These skills are not only applicable in business but are also invaluable in the personal and professional relationships. So what we'll do is we will we will begin with as far as the preview of topics are concerned, what we are going to cover in this lecture. We will begin with the principal negotiation, which is a method that emphasizes fairness and mutual respect. We will then explore how to develop creative alternatives when the obvious solutions fall short. And if you see the third point, which is wherein we will look at how power and persuasion can be wielded effectively without undermining the negotiation process. And post that, once we know what is the importance of power and persuasion, we will learn about collaborative negotiation and value building. A post that will follow, highlighting how cooperation can lead to better outcomes. And finally, we will cover techniques for successfully closing a negotiation and examine the real world case studies that illustrate these principles in action. So, I really encourage you to think about your own experiences as we go through each topic. Consider how these tools might apply in your negotiations, whether they are in the boardroom, across international borders, or even within your teams. So by the end of this lecture, you will have a robust toolkit to approach any negotiation with confidence and clarity. So let's start by exploring the first key concept, which is the principal negotiation. And this is one of the fundamental approach that lays the groundwork for effective and fair negotiation. So negotiation isn't just a business skill, it's a life skill. So it's not only that we can apply in the business world, but on a daily basis when we are building relationships, when we are convincing, when we are talking to other people around us in our environment. That's the reason it's called a life skill. So as negotiations become more challenging, particularly in a global context, mastering advanced tools becomes very much essential. And we should be, each one of us should be aware of these master skills. So today we'll explore how to elevate your negotiation abilities for better results. So the first principle that we'll be talking about, the first skill set, the first strategy as far as a negotiation is concerned is about the principal negotiation. And when we talk about the principal negotiation, that means it is a method that focuses on interest rather than positions. It's about finding mutually beneficial outcomes while maintaining a fair process. So it's not about hurting anybody's intentions. It's not about hurting anybody's viewpoint, but it actually focuses upon what exactly each and every party's focus is. What is the purpose of this communication between the two parties? And that's the reason there are four key principles that we take into consideration whenever we are talking about this method. Uh, Number one key principle is wherein whatever the focus of the discussion is between the two parties, we actually separate people from the problem. So we do not focus upon whether a CEO is discussing a particular communication or a deal with, let's say, a middle level manager. So we actually minus the designations here, and we minus that whichever place or cultural differences the two different people are coming from. But we are here, the main key principle of principle, that's the reason it's called principle. Our focus is addressed towards the problem. So address the issue at hand without letting personal emotions cloud the process. So here we are just focusing on the interest. We are not focusing on the positions of the people, right? So this, and that takes me to the second key principle, which is focus on the interest and not positions, which means understand the underlying interest instead of the rigid positions. And that's the reason I mentioned very clearly that we should not focus on the positions or designations of the people who are discussing about the particular deal or a particular problem, but we should focus upon why these two parties have come together. What is the focus of the discussion? And that takes me to the third principle, which means generate options for mutual gain. So here we are talking from a solution mindset. We are not talking from a problematic situation. So at times we need to think that what could be the possible solutions or alternatives in front of us. And that's the reason brainstorm brainstorming is a very essential skill here. So we should brainstorm a variety of solutions that can benefit all the parties. So let's say if two people have come together for a negotiation, what rather than hurting anybody's feelings or rather than going against each other, we should actually think from a solution mindset. That's so that both the parties uh, are on the same page and both the parties benefit. So it's a win-win situation for both the parties. And that takes me to the fourth key principle of this particular technique, which is use the objective criteria. That means rely on objective standards to guide the negotiation, such as market value or legal proceedings. So this means what will be the resulting outcome how will both the parties have a win-win situation. So that means we should focus on the objective, focus on the interest, and that is what the main theme of this strategy called as principal negotiation talks about. So let's say, for example, when entering a negotiation, we can use these principles to create a collaborative atmosphere where both parties feel respected, valued, and a mutual gain. And that is what the purpose of this particular strategy is, which is called as a principal negotiation. So basically, uh, in simple words, getting to a yes rather than a no, so that both the parties are in a beneficial stage. So there's no single party which loses out or which feels that there has been some unfairness or biasness that has been done. And that is where the good agreements should be fair, wise, efficient, and capable of lasting. So many negotiators, however, start with a position such as price and get ready to bargain. So this tends to be at times very confronting. Imagine that this is like a trench warfare wherein one person is of the mindset that no matter what, I have to win. And that actually leads to a long haul and makes the other person undervalued and disrespectful. So this kind of negotiation hasn't really worked out well in most of the situations. So that's the reason we say separate people from the problems. So we have to uh, separate the problem, separate the communication with the designation. And that's the reason the first step is to try and step back, untangle the personalities of different people who are there sitting in a deal from the issues at hand, acknowledge and respond to the emotions swirling around, and use words very carefully, listening actively, and using language designed uh, not to provoke while trying to see the other person's point of view also. And because of this, we are of the concern that we should focus on the interest and not on the positions. Because what happens is, if our interest needs to be put on the table, discussed, and as well as we expect that particular interest to be understood by the other party, so there should be the idea should be discussed in a manner that is understandable by everybody who's there sitting during that communication or during that deal. And that's the reason that's the reason we say that we should always go with a solution mindset also, because we have to generate options that are very creative and that the other person understands and that can be applied to that particular context of negotiation or a business also. And that's why the agreements resolving agreements should be very fair, should be very objective, should be very specific, and should be able to resolve the differences. So this is basically the first strategy whenever we talk about the advanced tool or negotiation. This is the first strategy that we take into consideration is the principal negotiation. Now, when we come to the second strategy, whenever we talk about the advanced tools, the second is the developing of creative alternatives. So, importance of creativity in negotiation means thinking outside the box, and that can lead to solutions that aren't immediately obvious. That and for this, the number one thing that we should take into consideration is brainstorming. So we should encourage all the parties to brainstorm without criticism, allowing for free flow of ideas, no matter even if it applies, even if it suits that particular deal or not. But everybody should be given a fair chance so that everybody should come up with their own ideas, whether it's relevant or not. And that's the purpose of brainstorming without criticism. The once the brainstorming is done, The next step is to look at the issue from different perspectives so that uh, it uncovers the new solutions. So let's say once the brainstorming is done, now we need to look at the issue, look at the problem from different perspectives. And that's the reason brainstorming was done beforehand, so that we can take up the ideas from each and every person involved sitting during that negotiation deal, and we take into consideration their perspectives. And I think it's better to have different people from different cultural backgrounds also, because as I mentioned earlier also, we are living in a global world wherein it's easy to connect, and it has become essential for all of us to be a part of this globalized and digitalized world. So I think different perspectives should be welcomed with an open uh, heart, so that we know that from maybe from one cultural may not apply to another, and vice versa situation. And that's why the third technique, which I'm going to talk about, is very much common nowadays, which is in the negotiation language, we call it as BATNA. That means the full form of BATNA is, it's called as the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So this means we should always have a backup plan that you can rely on if the negotiations do not work. Okay. Now, Batna also means wherein, let's say, for example, we can't agree on a particular situation. Let's say two parties are involved and they do not agree to a particular situation. So there could be other side of it, or maybe they can come up with something else or some idea again by further doing further brainstorming, and then they think, like, let's say if this doesn't work, is there anything else that we can collaborate on? So what happens is sometimes we can't agree, perhaps because the other side refuses to engage in the open way. So maybe, let's say, the other party is not open in expressing their viewpoints. So in that case, we may in that case, principal negotiation does not work, because principal negotiation means uh, removing the biasness of the designations and the personalities of all the people sitting around. So in this case, what happens is we need to call that particular communication out. And if someone makes a take it or leave it type offer, then we need to treat that situation as a proposal, and not simply accept the feeling of finality imposed by one side. So it's also important not to have a bottom line, especially when there are imbalances in perceived power. So the only reason to negotiate is to get a better deal than one we can get if we did not negotiate. That is our BATNA, the best alternative. Knowing what is the contingency plan? So basically, it's a contingency plan. What if something doesn't work? Then what do we do next? What is the next best alternative? So that is our BATNA, the best alternative. Knowing our BATNA, knowing our best alternatives helps us to make the most of what we have. And the power in negotiation comes actually from the ability to have, in the end, to walk away. And that is why this is a part of creative alternatives. Because if something does not work, do we have a contingency plan? Maybe from a buyer's settlement range, I may have a different uh, alternative. For a seller's perspective, there may be a different alternative. But how do we come on the common ground? What is the last thing that we will walk away? And that's the reason, if you see in the diagram, it's called as a seller's walkaway price and the buyer's walkaway price. So, what is that one alternative agreement that we should come together now? So that's the reason it's called as a part of creative alternatives, because it involves a lot of brainstorming. it involves about reframing the problem again and again. Because when we reframe the problem, there are different solutions that come into perspective. And that takes me to the third advanced tool of negotiation, which is the use of power and persuasion in negotiation. So, understanding, and this means understanding the power dynamics. So, power in negotiation can stem from various sources, including information, authority, or even charisma. So, when we talk about power, now there are different types of power. First being first being as the positional power. So authority derived from one's role or position in that organization. So let's say I'm at a top management position. So I have that positional power to instruct, to delegate work, and to get the things done from the people around me. So that is the positional power that has been assigned to me with the kind of work that I do in the organization. For example, CEOs, managing directors, executive directors, all of them have the positional power. The second kind of power is the personal power. So, influence gained through relationships, expertise, or reputation. Let's say some people may not have positional power in the organization as far as the role is concerned or designation is concerned. But there are some people in the organization who actually are very positive, who have that charisma to influence or convince the people around them. And they're known for their charisma, they're known for their personality. That's the reason it's called as personal power. And the third kind of power is the persuasive power. Now, this is the ability to sway opinions using logical arguments, emotional appeals, or credibility. So, this is basically the art of convincing. Do you have the art of convincing in you? And that's the reason a lot of times during negotiation deals, one of the criteria that we look into is that it, do you have the ability to convince? Because negotiation comes with convincing, negotiation comes with the ability to influence, to persuade their ideas. So that's the reason persuasive power is also very much necessary whenever we talk about how do we persuade, how do we use our power, authority, and persuasion in the negotiation deals. And this is very much the art of, this is one of the aspects wherein whenever we consider people going for negotiation deals, this is one of the skill set that we look into consideration, whether that person has a positional power or a personal power or a persuasive power. But in this case, the only thing that we should consider uh, whenever we're talking about this particular technique is that we should actually use that power responsibly. So we should use our power, whether we are at a positional power or a personal power or persuasive power, we should use that power responsibility so that we can foster a fair and productive negotiation environment. We should not misuse our power. That's the only thing that we should consider whenever we are talking about this particular advanced tool in the negotiation. And for this, the strategies that we can take into consideration is we should first have the uh, we should be very prepared as far as our knowledge is concerned. So knowledge is power. The more information we have, the stronger our position is. So whenever we are going for a negotiation deal or negotiation meeting or a communication, we should be prepared with our information gathering. We should do our own research. The second is the building relationships. So trust and rapport can actually amplify your personal power and negotiation. So that is, and that's the reason the first aspect of negotiation, whenever we go for negotiation, rapport building is very necessary. And from rapport building, the trust uh, comes automatically, and that actually helps us in making an effective communication. So use of very clear, confident language and active listening to that actually enhance our persuasive power. And I think this particular technique of negotiation is very much essential, but all of the considerations should be made very ethically so that we are not irresponsibly using our any kind of power, is like positional power, personal power, or persuasive power. The next kind of technique is the collaborative negotiation. So, collaboration negotiation, we also call it as integrative negotiation, that actually focuses on creating value for all parties involved. So, here the aim of the two parties is not fighting with each other, is not disrespecting each other, but as the term suggests, collaborative and integrative, that means coming together, integrating certain elements so that both the parties find a meaning in that particular negotiation or collaboration. And that's the reason the first key element of this kind of negotiation technique is the mutual respect. So recognize the other party's needs and work towards a solution that actually benefits uh, everyone. And once that respect is gained, the second very important key element of this particular collaborative negotiation is the open communication. So we should encourage transparency to build the trust and understanding so that we can jointly solve the problem. So this again requires a solution mindset. So we should work together to solve the problem rather than viewing the other party as a competition or as an adversary, right? So because here the key element is trust, rapport building, collaboration, integration, and that comes with respect, open communication, so that both the parties can benefit, both the parties can have a win-win situation. And that's the reason the key element, the key word for this kind of strategy is the win-win situation. Whenever we are talking about collaborative negotiation or we are talking about integration, the keyword that we can identify this type is the win-win situation. So the main important significance of this approach often leads to more sustainable as well as satisfactory agreements because it actually prioritizes long-term relationships over short-term gains. For example, let's say in a partnership negotiation, instead of fighting over profit shares, both the parties could work on increasing the overall value of the partnership, and that is what the collaboration or mutually beneficial, because both the parties are actually mutually benefiting. That's the reason it's called as collaborative negotiation. Because this particular approach actually fosters positive relationships, enhances trust, and promotes long-term success in business negotiations. And once all these rapport building, uh, use of power, and principle negotiation, when once all these steps have been uh, followed, the most important technique is how do we successfully close the negotiation, because that's the final step. So the importance of closing a successful negotiation isn't just about the discussion, but it's actually about sealing the deal. And that's the reason it is very important to review what has been agreed upon to ensure clarity and consensusness means that both the parties have agreed and are on the same page and have the same perception, have the same viewpoint. And that's the reason sometimes making a small concession can also encourage the other party to finalize the deal. So for this to reach to this point, it is very important to create a deadline. So, because deadlines actually create urgency and can help move the negotiation towards a closure. So, and this particular deadline actually presents the best offer as a final proposition, indicating that you are ready to conclude the negotiation. And that is what setting limits or finding the common ground means. And and with whenever we are at this stage, it's very important to come up with a closing statement. That means finish with a positive note, emphasizing the benefits of the agreement and the value of the relationship, so that there's a continuous relationship building whenever we are closing a deal, whenever we are closing a negotiation. And that's the reason this is these all these elements are called as the key steps to closing a deal. So, for example, let's say for example, let's say, for example, let's okay, so let's explore a few real world cases where advanced negotiation tools were applied in complex scenarios. So let's say, for example, let's take a business merger case. So where two companies negotiating a merger with conflicting cultures. So what could be the kind of approach that they can follow? Now, both these companies have a conflicting culture. That means two different countries. So how can they actually come together with a merger? Here, what we can do is apply the principal negotiation, because both the companies should have or should focus on shared interest. And both the companies are interested in growth as well as market expansion, while addressing the cultural differences through open communication. So in this case, if we consider this particular elements for a successful merger, so that our cultures cannot come in between our growth and market expansion, that's the reason we will use the principal negotiation technique. Another example could be, what will we do if there is a trade negotiation between countries with different economic interest? So here, since it's a trade negotiation and between the different countries and different economic interests, power and persuasion with both the sides leveraging their economic strengths and offering creative alternatives, so that to resolve the tariff disputes. So that's the reason we are applying power and persuasion here, so that the both the countries can actually resolve their conflicts with the help of persuasion, with the help of different positional or persuasion power techniques. So, so as far as the recap of today's lecture is concerned, we covered advanced negotiation tools, including principal negotiation, creative alternatives, the use of power and persuasion, collaborative negotiation, successful closing techniques, and some few real world case also. So remember, so as far as my final thoughts are concerned, remember negotiation is both an art and a science. So by applying these advanced tools, you can navigate complex negotiations with confidence and achieve mutually beneficial outcomes. So thank you for your attention. I hope these insights will uh, help you in your future negotiations. Thank you very much.